So actually September is Suicide Prevention Month, and yesterday was World Suicide Prevention Day. And
when I was a little girl, I did not want to grow up and do suicide prevention. Guess what? Yeah. Did any of you want to grow up and do suicide prevention when you were small? Yeah, no, that's not typically a life choice, right?
I have my moments where I feel like everything is fine, and then just kind of gets you. So
even to this day has an amazing impact in my life, and what I've been able to accomplish, I couldn't say that he didn't have influence on that.
And Susie, this is something that's affected my family, and it's very important to recognize warning signs, and that's what you guys are all about.
I never liked her. After they got married, I realized why. So there was one night where I was about 6, and she asked for me to do the laundry. Well, I couldn't reach the top, and she punished me.
damn, I didn't know my vacation time should be used to mourn and return back at the regularly scheduled time.
There are parts I'm proud of. There's a lot of me I'm not proud of, but still I write.
But what is suicide prevention?
And we know for a fact that within the past 30 days, 1 in 20 adults have had thoughts of suicide. So if we can get a room full of people, then we know that there are people that are personally affected and personally struggling with these things. And it just takes that one moment of them realizing there's help out there, and us putting them in front of that help and giving them that connection.
Grief has changed me, and all I ask is please be kind.
How much are you hoping that maybe through this conference, if you can save just one, it's worth it?
I definitely feel that way.
So if you're ready, let me know when.
Susie Reynolds Reece is an author, a speaker, and a violence prevention specialist for CHI St. Vincent. She is also the founder and executive director of Suicide Prevention Allies. We are so glad to have you here with us tonight. Thanks so much for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Let me ask you first about the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline we were just talking about.
All of the people that answer those calls are trained volunteers. So they're there because they want to be there. They go through a rigorous training, identifying warning signs, risk factors, assessing situations, and offering different types of support, not just for suicidality, but also if they're dealing with bullying or cyberbullying, various issues that might be crisis related. So it's an excellent resource for anyone. And if they happen to be a veteran or a military professional, they can also press 1 and they get military specific services, which is an amazing asset to have as well.
You got up in front of a crowd of several hundred people, and you told a remarkable story that moved me, and I think that moved everyone there.
It's the reason that I'm here today. So my father was in the military, and he was First Sergeant of the Old Guard, which is located right outside of Washington, D.C. They're the ceremonial unit for the military, and they're also the escort to the president.
This is my father with his company. He had an immense respect for his country. And more than that, he truly had a heart of service for people that he'd never met before.
At the time, I was right around the age of 9, and just so happened that President Clinton had just been elected. I recall standing on the sidelines as my dad was the first man on the first horse in his inaugural parade. So very proud. My stepmother and he started having some marital issues, and she requested that, first of all, that he retire, because I think she thought that a lot of that stuff was stemming from his military profession. And after he began retirement, she then asked for a divorce. He quite literally got down and just, this was a towering man. I mean, he was like 6'6". He was just the epitome of the man's man. And I remember distinctly having a conversation about how different our lives would be.
And having seen how this 6'6" man who was Superman had withered into something that I did not recognize. I remember being scared of seeing that decline, even at a young age, like 10 years old.
And for the first time in a very long time, I felt the need to let him know that she had been physically abusing me while they were married the entire time, and he was not aware.
And on our stairs, it was carpet, and it kind of angled around. And she grabbed me by my hair and pulled my hair, pulling the rest of my body up the stairs and then kicking me down the stairs. Not one time, not 2 times, over and over again until I couldn't see. I completely blacked out.
So I think, looking back, that was, the straw.
After my back was a bloody mess and my hair had been ripped from my head, she decided to put me on an airplane back to Benton. So I came home to my grandparents, who had become my second parents. And when my grandmother went to give me a bath, because I was such a small child, she pulled my shirt off my back, and it ripped open the sores that were underneath, exposing what she refers to as hamburger meat.
And he took her life and then his own. And I had just had my 10th birthday, so it was traumatizing in many ways. Did not understand what suicide was, did not really comprehend what death was, definitely did not know how to navigate that type of loss. And this was more than 20 years ago, so we just did not have the services that we do now.
They told me my dad left a note, and I thought it was, a note. And it's 10 pages of stuff. What is this? Why is it 10 pages? Who has time to do something like that if this is an abrupt decision? And a binder.
So I tried to adjust as best I could. I had family that adopted me from the military. We had a year-long process of it, and it was very intense. And I'm extraordinarily thankful for all of the servicemen and women who took the time to really care about me. Something that doesn't ever leave you. And so I started a few years back trying to figure out how to understand what happened to my father, what I was dealing with, and just realized that I had a real passion for speaking about this issue because most people don't want to.
I started a journey that I didn't even necessarily realize because I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand what was impacting my father to do such horrible things in the final days of his life, what was impacting the people around me to be so scared and timid to have conversations about things that people were experiencing, and what was impacting me in my own life.
They're scared of it, there's stigma, there's shame, and it really is, it's a mental health issue. It's a disease within the brain, and there are side effects to that. And I didn't know that at the time, and a lot of people around me didn't know that either.
Does anyone in here speak Greek? Not even one word? Does anyone in here know a single word of Greek? I bet you do. Has anyone ever heard of the word stigma? Ah, that is a Greek word, yes. Congratulations, it's all Greek to you. If you were a soldier or a slave and you had attempted suicide, they would brand you on the face to let everyone else know.
For many years in your family, it was kind of the elephant in the room, but it was
Definitely
not something that you talked about.
Right. It was a difficult thing, and I think the grieving process is in itself, and you have different ways of grieving. You have those who want to be open and tell the world how much they love that person, and then you have those who need to understand or keep them more to themselves. And we're all so complex.
My grandparents having a conversation right after my father passed, and someone very specifically, very explicitly told them, she needs to see a counselor. What did they do? They said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to handle this ourselves, right? And how did they handle it? We didn't, right? Because we didn't know what to do. Can you imagine losing a son like that and then having to adopt a 10-year-old child after you're 60 years old? I can't imagine the feelings that they were experiencing themselves. One of the things that really helped me was the fact that I had someone in my life who gave me a journal, and she said, write. And I wrote about everything. I wrote about how I was feeling. I wrote about the things that I was thinking. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and I really truly believe that that is what saved my life.
Putting words around my thoughts and expressing my struggles has saved my life more times than I could ever count. It started in journals. Dozens and dozens of journals. When I share things publicly, please understand it is not necessarily a way of asking for attention, but a way of sharing a piece of my soul to you. In a moment, I felt led to do so.
Because if you can only imagine, after experiencing some of the things that I've gone through, I had depression, yes. But I have another terrible character flaw. I am a very curious person. And because no one was discussing anything that I was experiencing, I wanted to learn more. So I went to this place, and some of you might be familiar with it. I know the kids aren't, but it was called the library, right? And I found a book in the library. And I remember reading this book, and it said something to the effect of...
You learned, I know, when you were young, that people who survive those who commit suicide are themselves at a greater risk of suicide. How did you kind of deal and process that burden?
Oh, that was, I remember, I think I was about 12, and I remember reading a book in the library, and it just, your heart stops.
If you lose someone to suicide, especially an immediate family member, your chances of dying by suicide are pretty much a given. Slammed the book shut, put it back on the shelf, and thought, how is that fair? How is that fair to me that he makes a life choice to not be alive anymore, and then he determines the rest of my life? How is that fair? So I realize now, looking back, that it's more than just because someone did something that it's a genetic thing. I truly believe that it has to do with an environment in which we are having these conversations or not having these conversations.
Because you're navigating so many different emotions. You're angry with the person, you love the person, and you don't understand how you can both be angry and love them. And then you see that even though they're not here, they're still influencing your life, and not in a positive way. And I think that after I began looking at it, I understood that it isn't just their loss, but it's the environment that you're growing up in after, and the fact that you're stigmatized because of what's happened and how we don't discuss this issue.
So the word stigma means mark, burn, or scar. Did you all know that?
And it's such an unhealthy topic because of how we navigate it or don't.
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, you were able to navigate yourself to a place where you were speaking out, you were becoming an expert on this. How did you manage to do that?
There was an organization in our community called Project Hope, and it still exists today, and it's a community coalition, and they identify health needs within a community setting, and these types of organizations are all over the state. And at the time, I happened to be volunteering with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
And what are some of the warning signs?
This is one of the hardest things because the warning signs are going to be different because we're all very individual and unique. But this is one of the few times where people will say, if your gut is telling you that there's something wrong, trust your gut.
Yeah.
You know your friends, you know your coworkers, you know your family members, and if they're not acting like themselves, if they seem depressed, if there are other things going on that you're concerned about. And the most difficult question is, are you having thoughts of suicide?
Yeah.
It's off-putting for some people to think that, but you know, it's better to ask and get an answer than not ask and have regret. Next week we have a conference in Spa City which is actually the acronym that we rebranded our nonprofit, Suicide Prevention Allies. We went big, you know, go big or go home, something
Absolutely.
like that. So we're having several days of pop-up events at National Park College, Ouachita Behavioral Health and Wellness, and then a full-day conference at the Arlington Resort Hotel and Spa. And wow, there it is again.
Yeah.
We're very excited about it.
So, do they need to register ahead of time?
That would be lovely, since we like to feed them, and it's helpful for the food. So we do have some links on Facebook. They can look at our page, Suicide Prevention Allies, and then the Center for Healing Hearts and Spirits is actually the hosting organization, and you can contact them for more information as well.
Susie, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
And unfortunately for you, you have to deal with it now. And it's not fair. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to any of us who've lost someone. And this is why this is something that we can try and do something about it. And we can try and change what we see and what we think and what we say. And maybe he wouldn't have spoken to you, but maybe there was a peer. Maybe there was someone in there that understood because they were with him. Maybe there was someone there, but they didn't know.
Those first 9 days, people paused a little more. They stopped and spoke and remembered I wasn't normal or whole. They were delicate and gentle. They gave time and words and made moments linger when everything was gray. God, how I wish I could remember things other than that gray. And they showed up in ways I can never forget. Those first 9 days, it was okay to not be okay. Those first 9 days, I saw humanity at its finest. What a sight I saw too. On the 10th gray day, when the to-do list had been too done, I sat. I sat in murky air and tried to recall those first 9 days. I tried to remember names, places, faces, something, anything. Some stood out. In those moments when we needed them, in those moments when the black and white had been pierced by love and compassion, color had shone through at times, but still my monochrome morning had seemingly won. That 10th day, though, the quiet was resoundingly loud. The clock ticked, ticked, ticked away desolate seconds in my emptied heart. I couldn't stand that day, the longest day, the day of solitude and sadness, the quiet day. On the 11th gray day, I did something. I don't really recall what. I talked, posted, spoke, wrote. I think I ate. Maybe I didn't. But I did something. And the people saw their expectations of my normal once again. The 11th day, when I was gray and the world around me continued along at its usual pace, and my heart had no choice but to cry a little more. Then there was the 12th day. I must have been cracking a little bit more because I misspoke, and someone laughed. They made a joke and I laughed too, but I didn't tell them how I couldn't remember. I didn't say it was because I'm here, but not. I didn't ask them to pause and consider because those first 9 days were done now. I was told time moves on, and so must we. On the 12th day, the words weren't as aware, the eyes weren't as lingering, the hearts hadn't quite held on like mine had, and so I held my tongue so they wouldn't have to sit in pain. I held my heart back for them not to feel unnecessary agony. There were more of them, and I am but one. It made sense to let them live, even though I didn't remember how. On the 16th day is when I was finally forgotten. My pain was no longer seen, and the anger I felt from someone close, someone who found ill intention in my absent-mindedness, told me my grief was no longer allowed. They saw my forgetfulness and were frustrated, and I had no excuse to use in my defense. 15 days had come and gone. It's time to move along now, to be normal once more. I guess I should have saved up more sick leave.
We can't remember who said what, who was where we are. We can't remember our people. We walk out of the room and don't know why. We're looking for our phones that we're holding. We get lost driving. We can't remember how to finish our own sentence.
On the 20th day, it happened more and more, so I mentioned it less and less. I no longer spoke of the unforgettable things I saw. I no longer shared the heartache openly because it was uncomfortable. It was hard to see, hard to hear, and my time to share was up. My time to love and mourn those who I would never again see or hear or hold a single day in my life was up within the first 9 days of losing them. I'm sorry to all of you. All of those who have loved and lost and will never be the same again. I'm broken for you. You can be gray with me. You can be forgetful. You can be broken and pained. You can overlook and even walk through me. And I would never tell you it isn't okay, because it simply is. I will do my best to be more compassionate in this because I have seen it now. I have lived it.
We have moments where we put our faces on and someone says, "Man, you're doing good for someone who..." No, just no. We have been judged. Days where I know misspellings and cluttered thoughts make me sound like a rambling mess, but still I write. Lying in my bed knowing I need sleep. Writing because it is the comfort I can grasp at, and this one, such. Everywhere I look, I see pain seeping out of souls, longing for peace. All I want for you is this pain, this soul-wrenching pain, to do one good thing, just one. So please, learn from us.